There you go. Recording has started, so I'll let everyone in now.
So, good afternoon, everyone, and good evening, depending upon where you are in the world today. I'm welcoming you to today's event, which is entitled AI and the Future of Work. My name is John Storm, the Director of MBA Programs, Alumni and CPD at the University of Aberdeen Business School. I shall be your host today as we explore how AI is impacting workplaces not only today, but also in the future to come. As AI technologies are evidencing change to all sectors and industries, I'm grateful to be joined by fantastic speakers from a range of industry backgrounds. We have had a bit of a change due to one of our arranged speakers having a personal emergency today, but I'm therefore grateful for Olive Hu, who's stepping in last minute. So today with me on screen, you'll see our three speakers. We have Olive Hu, who is HR Director at Auditoire in Shanghai. So she's at the forefront of digital marketing. She's got direct access to see how AI is impacting the creative professions. And as HR Director, she can also provide insights into what this means for talent in the workplace. Jag Kundi is an adjunct professor at the university in Hong Kong. He's a board advisor, mentor, and an investor to high growth businesses covering digital currencies, tokenization, and contactless payment solutions. And last but not least, we have our very own Donald Hislop, who's professor at the University of Aberdeen. And he researches how artificial intelligence and robots are shaping the managerial, professional, and service work. Now, our audience today will have a range of experiences and exposures to AI. Whether you are leading the integration of AI technology into your business's innovative solutions, or perhaps completely unfamiliar with the world of tech, but curious to learn more, we aim to make this roundtable discussion accessible and stimulating for all. So to help us achieve this, our schedule today has two components. First, I'm going to invite in just a moment Donald to provide a short presentation that introduces some of the fundamental concepts and trends that will be discussed in more depth. This will be roughly about 10 minutes. Following this, we'll have an extended roundtable discussion between our three speakers. I'm going to invite all members of the audience to join us by posting comments or questions into the chat box. I'll then pose these to our speakers. However, it is one of those things that we might not be able to address all questions that are raised. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Donald and invite Donald to deliver our opening presentation.
Thank you, John, and welcome everyone again. I'll just get my slides ready. Okay, so hopefully you can see the slides. So I'm going to talk very briefly about AI and the future of work. As John says, this will take about 10 minutes. It's really, I'm trying to present contrasting perspectives and possibilities because this is an embryonic topic. There's lots of hype, there's lots of debate, lots of different perspectives, and I want to reflect that. And at the end of my presentation, I'm going to invite you to participate in a poll question to tell me what your perspectives on AI and the future of work are. So before I start, as you would expect from an academic, I need to give you a definition of what I perceive AI to be. So for me, with the first bullet point, AI is about technologies which have some cognitive capability. They can learn, adapt, and evolve autonomously. So these are products which have some independent cognitive capabilities and can evolve. These AI capabilities are increasingly embedded in a range of different technologies, so more and more AI-powered tech is appearing in the world. So computer programs such as algorithms, chatbots, etc. are now AI-powered. Robotics technologies have AI embedded within them. So we're increasingly faced with a range of AI-enhanced technologies, okay? So how will this impact work, society, etc.? So to give you a quote to start with, this is from the late Stephen Hawking, and I would say he's kind of sitting on the fence, really, about the impact of AI. He talks about how AI could be either the best or the worst thing to happen to humanity. It's too early to tell. So it could be great or it could be terrible. And there's different perspectives on AI. So by the end, I'll give you a more nuanced perspective on different alternatives. So what is happening in terms of trends and investment, etc.? A couple of bits of data for you. One about spending levels to start with. Goldman Sachs are suggesting that by 2025, there's going to be $200 billion a year invested in AI. So it's going to be a significant thing. How will this impact on work? This is probably one of the most contentious issues. Lots of media attention about jobs, job losses due to AI, etc. The IMF did a report earlier this year, and they said globally 40% of jobs would be impacted. They didn't say people would lose their jobs, but 40% of jobs globally would be impacted in some way via AI technology. They differentiated that for different economies and suggested that for the advanced economies, it could be up to 60% of jobs might be impacted by AI, and for the developing economies, up to 25%. So in every country, AI is likely to have an impact on work. The next few slides, I want to look at some examples of how AI has changed work, and partly reflecting my research interests, my focus is on knowledge work and creative work. And one of the articulated differences about AI-based automation is that it has impacts on knowledge work and creative work. So I want to sort of touch on this. So one way in which AI automation is impacting on knowledge work is through the automation of routine tasks, okay? All knowledge work, all creative work has some element of routine tasks. So a couple of examples, pathology and healthcare. AI is being used to analyse digital images and scans and provide information to doctors about breast cancer diagnoses, etc. In financial services, AI is being used to underpin algorithms which crunch enormous amounts of data and give advice to investors about what decisions to make regarding financial investments. The key thing at the bottom here about this type of AI-enhanced automation, human beings still make the decision, but it's supported by data generated via AI, and humans still undertake the creative elements of these jobs, okay? But there's other ways in which AI has impacted on knowledge work and creative work. A more collaborative approach is in the healthcare context, where AI-enhanced robotic surgery is now a very common thing. And there's a couple of technologies, Da Vinci and Rosa, fairly well-established technologies where surgical procedures are being undertaken with the help of robotic technology. Again, a key thing here is the human surgeon is in control. The robot doesn't act autonomously or independently. We have human surgeons using AI-enhanced robots to undertake surgery. So this is very much a human-robot collaboration with humans in charge. Final couple of examples is possibilities where AI can do creative work. And this may be where you may have different perspectives. You may agree with this or disagree. There is a robot artist called Aida, which was designed by an art gallery curator. there's lots of videos on YouTube of Aida, and Aida is argued to be an AI artist who creates artwork using AI. Aida is the robot in the second image, and she creates artwork. Another way in which creative work is potentially automating intellectual work and changing things is through ChatGPT-4, probably a technology that we're all very familiar with. There's enormous chat about this, enormous hype about this technology. Potentially, this technology could automate the writing of reports and any sort of creative work. So the potential for this to impact on knowledge work, report writing, marketing, any job which involves writing reports is quite significant. But there's a question, are we talking about hype or reality here? We need to be cautious sometimes. So to draw things to a close, building from the Stephen Hawking quote, I want to sort of outline 4 potential perspectives on AI and how it may impact on society and work. Okay, so I want you to think about which perspective seems most realistic to yourselves, and I'm going to ask you in a minute to vote. So there's an optimist perspective, which has a vision, a utopian vision where humans are in control. We control the AI, we control the robots, they do all the work, and we just need to focus on leisure and pleasure. Okay. The pessimist perspective is a sort of Terminator type dystopian vision where we've designed technology which is taken over. The technology is more powerful, more intelligent than human beings, and human beings become second-class citizens to the technology. The pragmatist perspective is a more balanced perspective, which argues that AI is a fundamental part of life. It will change life and work for all of us. It will involve work where we have to collaborate with technology. It will augment work, but it won't replace people. And the final perspective is the doubter perspective, which takes the view that human intelligence is unique and it's impossible to embody human intelligence in AI. There's something intrinsically distinctive about the human brain, and it is not possible to automate that at all. Okay, so 4 quite different perspectives. So what I want to finish off is ask you, which of these 4 perspectives do you take? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this screen and share another screen with the poll question that you can vote in. Oh, no, sorry, wrong one. There we are. Okay, so to vote in the poll, you go to menti.com. It will ask you to put in that 8-digit code. If you put in that 8-digit code, it will then give you the option of voting for the optimist, pessimist, pragmatist, or doubter perspective. And in the bottom right, it tells you how many people have voted in the poll. So if you would like to get online and vote, and we'll see what people's different perspectives are, that would be great. Thank you. Voter number 1. This is all anonymous. Okay, I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes, see if we get a few more votes. Okay, well, I'm going to just because of time, I'm going to pass back to John. My analysis here, you know, there's an interesting spread between optimist, pessimist, etc. I'm not surprised that most people have gone for the pragmatist. I think it's probably the more balanced perspective. You know, optimism, cautious optimism, I would say, is the pragmatist. But I'm going to stop there and pass back to John if you want to start with the questions.
Thank you, Donald. Yeah, I'll kick off with a couple of questions, and just as I do that, I'll remind for all people in the audience that we do have a chat box. At any time, please do feel free to type in a question, and I'll pose that to one of our speakers. Equally, we are on Teams, so there may even be the option of raising hand, and I can invite you in to orally present a question later on as well. So maybe my first question for Jag, you know, on the back of Donald's presentation there, you know, he's provided a useful overview to help us understand the key concepts of HR, and you know, we can understand how it's beginning to impact different areas of work, as well as we're seeing people have different perspectives and attitudes towards AI. You're in the finance sort of area. What observations do you have with regarding the scope and the scale of investments into AI across the various industries that you're familiar with?
Okay, thank you very much for the question, John. Okay, and Donald, very good presentation there on the earlier parts of AI. I think from my perspective, I work primarily in the fintech space, although I've kind of moved into some of the adjacencies like prop tech and health tech as well, simply because technology is a big enabler. Now, AI, I think, is not specific to a single industry. From what I see, AI is affecting all industries, whether you're in the automotive, manufacturing, very easy to see, but equally education, healthcare that Donald mentioned as well, logistics, retail, commerce, finance, obviously. Yeah, AI is having impact in these industries. And again, you know, Donald gave some statistics about the $200 billion by 2025 investment. Let's just put things into context here. In 2023 alone, we spent globally on AI services, which is both hardware, software, and services, $153 billion. So that $200 billion in 2025, I see comfortably being beaten easily. The cumulative growth rate at the moment they're anticipating for these technologies until 2030 is around 37%. And just alone from the investment point of view, so the money going into startups, which is the area I kind of work in 2023, we had over $43 billion going into these new technologies across 2,500 startup roundups for funding. So there's a lot of money driving change at all levels in this space. And again, because of time, I'm just going to focus on the finance industry, just to give you an examples of the scale and scope that you were referring to. But equally, if we had more time, we could talk of healthcare and other issues as well. So just to give you some examples. Now, investment banking is a very well-respected, well-paid profession. And if you're working in that profession, count yourself lucky. Prior to listening to this conversation, after this presentation, you may look at polishing your CV and looking at some other job prospects. Because again, in this space of AI, in this space of investment banking, something like a junior analyst or a senior analyst, mergers and acquisitions is a very intensive business where you're looking at companies to acquire, take over, merge, etc. Yeah. Now, I'm actually working with a handful of companies where they're developing technologies that can look at balance sheets, financial statements, public information, all of this data, and actually crunch the data using their proprietary algorithms to understand, could this be a potential merger target, and for whom, at what price? All of these things can be done pretty much on the fly and very quick. Something that would take an investment analyst, investment banker, weeks, months of research, you could do in minutes, literally, with this type of technology. So again, this disruption that we talk about across industries that AI is bringing, I would honestly say that no industry is immune from this. You know, and we constantly are told certain industries like a baker, somebody working with their hands, this type of work, you know, that can't be outsourced yet. even those industries, I think, will be outsourced via or replaced, let's say, via robotics, coupled with AI. In the 1970s, we saw the trend where machinery, robotics replaced blue-collar work. In the 1990s, in the 2000s, we saw computers, software starting to take over white-collar work. Now, if you mash this together with AI as well, where you can have smart robotics, automation, all come in, then the creative element of some of this type of work, AI can do this. So the scale and scope, to go back to your question, John, is either, again, I'm going to sit on the fence like the presenter you mentioned earlier, that it's either going to really make a massive, massive transformational change for companies, businesses, the economy, the society, or it's going to devastate economies. Because if you have people out of work and we have more leisure, I think you mentioned in one of your slides, Donald, that we will have more time, the utopian view, we have more time for leisure. But then how does society function? Because where does tax come from? Do we tax now data, robotics, AI? Because if people are unemployed, sorry, not unemployed, let me say, replace that word, are too busy engaging in leisure and pastime, how do they survive? How do they live? How do they buy food? And where does government get tax from? So the whole nature of society, the social contract that we have, government looks after us, we pay money for tax, and government, society, takes care of everything else. These unwritten contracts need to be examined. And nobody's doing that at this stage. The ethical issues of the scale and scope, the impact of AI, it's only just emerging at the kind of periphery. But what the technology can do is what's driving the big change forward. So, these are big questions, and I'm sure, the panel members here and obviously the audience will have their views and ideas on this as well. But that's just one example where investment banking, is a protected, well-respected, highly paid profession. I can see that being disrupted within 2 to 3 years is what I would say. Certainly at that lower level where analysts, the analysis work, the big data analysis, you actually won't need the human element for this. The machines will be able to do this, or the software will be able to do this much quicker, much cheaper, much faster than me and you. So this is just one example. Another example, again, in the finance space, wealth management. We all want to manage our money. At the moment, we've outsourced this to government with pensions, but as we're realizing, maybe not so good in the future because pension liabilities are being underfunded in many cases. So there are companies now developing wealth management tools using AI where they can look at arbitrage across jurisdictions, across multi-asset classes as well. So not just stocks and equities, but bonds, real estate, wine, watches, anything that is investable, it can be bought and sold via a market at a certain price. In a certain currency, and this can be done very, very quickly, autonomously, given certain rules. So there's a whole range of new technologies which we're just at the cusp of, I think, that we're going to change the way we kind of operate, particularly in the finance space, but equally other industries, as I mentioned, the healthcare and education are the other ones I'm concerned for as well, because I see big fundamental shifts in that area as well. So I think it's not all doom and gloom also. When we have this replacement of work, new jobs are created. Now, if you just go back 10, 15 years, there were very few social influencers who were doing this for a living. There were very few data mining scientists. There were very few IoT sensors or cloud services available, but now we have all industries around this. So I think, again, when we have AI coming more and more to the forefront, we'll see more machine learning, AR, VR, metaverse type jobs being created, which will supplant or replace or collaborate with perhaps, the existing work. But what I think we certainly all need to be considering at this level is to be considering how do we upskill our knowledge banks, our knowledge, our understanding of these technologies, so we can maximize their potential, as opposed to just sitting on the fences and wait and see attitude, which I don't think will be very, very productive. So I hope that answers your question, John.
Not only have you answered the question, you've raised 50 more. Thank you for sharing so much. I'm maybe just going to build on that last point there, because you've mentioned with regards to training needs, and on that note, I think my next question will be directed towards Olive, who is working in HR. And actually, Olive, we had a question just yesterday where we were discussing online about what does this mean for organizations? What does it mean for HR? What does it mean for training? And I suppose my question for you, Olive, is that given new technologies around AI are just changing so fast, how do companies keep their employees up to date?
So actually that relies on both parties' efforts. So firstly, okay, as a company, we try our best to provide the tools, the updated tools to our employees for them to learn, to offer the opportunities. We bought accounts for DALL-E 2, for Midjourney, for ChatGPT. And also we organized a series of training last year, beginning of the last year, to train up our designers and planners to use Midjourney to generate pictures, photos. Okay, and after that, I still believe as a staff and as a human being that we need to keep on studying. We need to open to those new technology. We need to think about, we need to drive by ourselves rather than only wait for a company to feed you up. By chance, maybe this company can, however, you're still your owner, right? As an individual. So you need to drive, because actually as using AI, you need to learn how to communicate with AI language. This is another thing that we need to learn, because it's not an automatic skill that you can speak a language, no matter Chinese or English, that means you can communicate with an AI. Because if I pull in some words in Midjourney, however, my output will be definitely less impactful or interesting than a planner or a designer when they communicate to Midjourney. So actually still, I think in a way is individual drive and company support. That will be the way that we are working on.
For the benefit of maybe people joining us today who haven't had a go with different AI technologies, could you maybe just expand a little bit about what you mean by communicate with AI and the prompt? Why is that maybe a learning experience? You mentioned just learning, it's like learning another language. What do you mean by that?
Because actually when I use ChatGPT, for example, I asked ChatGPT to help me to generate a notice to the company. If I only write, okay, draft an office cleaning notice, that will give you a might be not relevantly good article. However, you need to further ask. You need to further ask, okay, provide more context to the ChatGPT, and then shape the words. The ChatGPT will shape their words for you very quick. And also you can change the tone. You can ask the ChatGPT to generate in a more human way. So actually you need to change a little bit your way of communicating. You need to speak out every word very clearly, because the ChatGPT cannot see your face. As we always say that words are only part or a very small portion of communication. However, still right now, the AI might be some interview AI. They can sense your body language, your impression on your face. However, still the ChatGPT is not at that design so far. So you need to be very specific if you use ChatGPT. However, if we turn to like a Midjourney or DALL-E 2, these kind of design used AI, that means you need to understand some design language. You need to know some artistic language. Otherwise, our words to describe a art piece will be very plain at our level. However, for our designers or planners, they know different kind of artistic style. So they can very specifically to describe their needs. Yeah.
Thank you, Olive. And I think some people are seeing that we've got an active conversation happening in the chat around that. Absolutely, people agreeing with the need for training in terms of input prompt, AI prompts, engineering, and yeah, it starts to beg the question, maybe with regards to the role of education, as Jag was talking about, and how this is going to impact education. So maybe coming back to Donald very briefly, putting it slightly differently, because Donald, you not only in terms of research, but you obviously work a lot with undergraduate students. Is AI being used within education? Do you think this is something that students are open towards? Are they exploring in their own time? Do you get questions around it? Like, for people coming into the workplace, what's their attitudes towards this?
In terms of that, you know, are young people using ChatGPT? Are young students using these technologies? Yes, absolutely. You know, we're talking about digital natives, and you know, these people, you know, young people are, you know, at university are embracing these technologies. I think as the technology matures, we're not talking about just ChatGPT. There's other companies with other platforms. These technologies will become like Google, where, you know, Google is a part of our life. You know, I would say Google is the most incredible information source any of us have. If you want to find a restaurant time, if you want any piece of information, you go on your phone and Google will tell you. I think ChatGPT is going to be like that in the future. That's where young people go. As education institutions, we have to accept that. I don't think we should run away from it. As universities, we have to embrace it and assume that students are using ChatGPT or equivalent, and think, how do we change our assessments to acknowledge that rather than try and stop them using it. I think it's foolish to try and stop them using it, and I think these ChatGPT is potentially very useful, so we shouldn't stop them using it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's demonstrating demand, isn't it? You know, and it's also people are learning a skill. Whether or not we like that skill is another matter. I'm going to bring in some members from the audience, because I do notice that there are some questions coming, and Mohsen Youssefarat has had his hand up quite patiently for a while. Mohsen, you've got a question. Do you want to, if your hand is raised, do you want to speak your question, or do you want to type it into the chat? I'll give you a moment to make your preference there. Okay. So I'm not hearing the question come through. I'm not sure if that's a moment. Feel free to type that in, but I'll might lower the hand in just a moment otherwise. Ijema
Can I ask a question?
Please, yeah.
It's really a question to Olive. You know, working in HR, and it's I teach HR as part of my job, and it's looking at the impact of AI on different HR tasks, and it's increasingly potentially significant. And this is one of these tasks where, you know, you think HR is a human. It requires human sensitivity, human emotion, human empathy, but AI is increasingly impacting on it. Things like selection and recruitment, where, you know, robots are looking at CVs, or we have chatbots providing training and counselling, etc. So my question to Olive is, to what extent do you think AI will be used in the HR domain?
Yes, definitely. Why not? We will integrate that. Maybe step by step. I don't think that will be one day totally change the HR work, but step by step. So actually right now, I still think that like from the beginning, like computer science or some other technologies started to automatically to proceeding some HR data already. And right now, after that, AI is even smarter. So they can do more analytic stuff for HR, as maybe most of the HR are not strong at that point. So they can help us. And I tried even some AI coach. Yeah. So actually, AI will integrate it to the HR world, might be at a very efficient way. Because if you consider, if we need to talk to a coach, that you need to make an appointment, right? And then you need to pay at least not a very low price. However, if you choose a AI coach, if you are willing to, maybe you still have some emotional barrier to choose that. But if you want to, that's really convenient at a reasonable price. But somehow maybe you can get benefit. You still will feel comfortable, or you feel released, or you can maybe be enlightened by an AI coach. So actually, in different ways, and I'm willing to try new stuff in HR function, because why not? And we need to use that and leverage those techniques, because my core or my perspective on HR part is still, I want to be more focused on the support to the business and the human's development. So if AI can support me to do the rest of those administration work, or help me to quickly to generate some analysis and data records, why not? So I can focus more on my expertise. So that's my
great. Thank you.
answer.
Yeah, it's interesting, and at the same time, it's not surprising. You know, when things went online during COVID and education went online, we saw that, for example, a lot of people who are more naturally introverted were actually favorable towards online learning, where there wasn't necessarily the fear of participating, speaking in front of people, you know, audiences. So they were actually quite comfortable in such an environment, where it's also similarly people from certain personality type persuasions might find an objective, unobtrusive AI to be more easy to communicate with, you know, less resistance from that sort of area. So yeah, quite interesting in different things. So returning to some of the questions, and I acknowledge that there are a few, so we'll see how we can scan down. So apologies if I missed a few. We have Atif Sawar is highlighting that, and I think this comes back maybe to Jag's comment, that maybe AI partly might have an impact depending upon what stage we are within our career. You were mentioning, Jag, about particularly early stage people within banking and finance. So within our stage of career, how do we think that AI is going to impact us? Is it that we need to learn new skills, or is it that we just need to be aware of its effect and maybe manage people who are using AI?
Again, very good question from Atif Sawar. Yeah. So when I look at professions, you've got newcomers to the profession, you've got people kind of mid-level, and then you've got, you know, the C-level suite. I think the C-level suite has got to be aware of the technologies and the, let's say, strategic impact of what the technology can offer as far as superior performance, competitive advantage, etc., etc. The actual programming for maybe somebody who's 60, 70-year-old is not going to happen, I don't believe. Okay, it's just not going to be there. But the understanding, awareness, the managerial impact, for sure, they need to be aware of. So certain awareness, coaching, mentoring classes to understand the impacts on dynamics of AI on their business, their competitors, etc. They need that. Okay. coming down that rung then from the top, working down into the organization, at the bottom level, the large organizations, I'll give you an example, JP Morgan, for example, now, Citibank, HSBC, they are mandating all employees, new employees will have AI training. That's a given. It's not an option, it's a given, simply because these are the skill sets that their future leaders, managers will have to have as a necessity. You know, a few years ago, having understanding awareness of AI was a competitive advantage. Today, it's a competitive necessity. It's not an advantage anymore. It's very easily available, freely available if you're using ChatGPT 3.5 and other versions, let's say, freely available. So you have to be using this. Now, people coming into this profession, again, they need more than awareness. They need a certain level of understanding, possibly some programming skills, Python, for example, VBA and others. It's just going to be a given, you know, just like when we in my own experience, let's say when I entered the work profession, it was a given that I knew how to use Excel, PowerPoint, Word, etc. The employer didn't ask, do I know this? It was just assumed you would. As a university graduate, it's assumed that you've learned these technologies. And I think it's the same with AI now at that entry level. Having said that, I think the spot that's going to be squeezed is the middle managers, because they might be too young to learn, but not old enough that they're quite on the strategic dimension. So for them, they're going to be squeezed at both ends. How do you adapt? How do you learn? So one, you've got to take initiative. You've got to invest in your own brand, you know, which is what you are now. You're an asset yourself. You're a brand. You have to promote it, upskill it, unlearn some skills to learn valid skills, marketable skills in the market today. What you simply know because you've learned over many, many years may not be useful in the market today, particularly tasks that are very routine, very sort of manual kind of work that, you know, will be automated very, very quickly. And we see that already in many areas. Robotic process automation, for example, in finance. You know, these technologies are having impacts at these levels. So to me, you know, I think at that mid-level management, you've really got to take that initiative of not quite forcing yourself, but putting yourself in the environment where you can try and learn, absorb these new technologies and how you can kind of integrate them at low cost, low pain as well to you in your work, in your role, in your profession. Because I think the younger generation coming in, they're already quite switched on. They know how these technologies work. They're very comfortable. The older generation at the C-level, they're making the decisions. As long as they have the strategic insight and the vision for this, it's not that paramount for them to do the coding software for themselves. But I think it's that middle level, the 45 to 60-year-old, let's say, again, just generalizing, around that kind of range where people think, hey, I'm set in my career. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for a number of years. I'm not going to change. That's, I think, the hardest block where that status quo needs to be shifted a little bit. And these people need to immerse themselves, attend, you know, events like this, conferences. There's many. Go online, have a look, see what's available. There's lots of good content out there. If you want to learn about AI, go to IBM, their website. They have free classes, coaching, and all of these areas, no cost. And IBM is one of the leaders in this space as well. So, you know, there's a lot of good content. So I hope that kind of addresses your question. But if I could just, John, just follow up to one of the questions that one of the speakers kind of put on earlier about, sorry, let me just scroll back up. Yeah, sorry, the question about trust. I think this is something quite important as well, because, you know, Donald hit the nail on the head when he said AI is based on logic. It's an algorithm. There is no human feeling. There is no empathy. There is no emotion in the decision. It's simply based on logic. And what we're seeing is if the data that the AI algorithms are trained on is not properly vetted and checked, then the output we get can also be corrupted. You can also lead to, if you're looking at vast data sets, you also give rise to a problem called AI hallucinations or data hallucinations, where spurious correlations arise, where actually there's nothing real behind this. It's just because the data set is so big, it's just a random event. It's never going to happen. It's just a one-off event. So these things, you know, we've got to have trust in data. And this is something I think which comes back to the data sets that people are used to training on. There is no industry standard globally for this. everybody's using anything and everything. So in some cases, you know, the big companies like OpenAI, they're simply traced on the internet, grabbing all this free information and analyzing this and creating their OpenAI ChatGPT. Other companies were more selective and they were looking at, let's say, condition data that they're testing, so to be more reliable in some ways. Now, this is a problem, I think, because, or can be a problem, let's say, because if we're not checking the validity of the data that's going in, then the decisions that we are making based on the outputs we're getting may be biased. So we need some kind of model or framework or some legislation, perhaps even, or industry best practices emerging, coming out quickly that can try and standardize this, because everybody's competing in this space. OpenAI with their ChatGPT, Copilot, Microsoft, Llama from Meta. We've got the one Bard from Google. Everybody's creating their own AI. But our problem is going to be, whose AI do we use? You know, we talk of Google being so useful and everything, but then if you use Explorer, if you use a Copilot, if you use Safari, all these different search engines, you get different results. So that trust, we've got to try and narrow that down and understand, do we need external regulators, internal regulations, so that people do trust the results coming out from AI? Because there is some quite scary stories. Women, for example, typically get refused bank credit when using AI models. You know, and that's simply because a lot of the programming is done by male guys. So there's these issues, which again, as we use this technology more and more, as it becomes more prevalent in our lives, we'll see the negative aspects. And if we don't try and deal with them fast enough, then it's a compounded problem. It'll get bigger and bigger.
So I'm going to build on that and segue into Regina's question, you know, because one of the things with AI is, in the end, it's LLM, right? It's language modeling,
yeah.
And they're learning not only from the information which is out there in the cloud, but they're also learning from our inputs. So we've seen, for example, that AI can actually reveal uncomfortable biases in human nature. So if you type in, you know, a prompt about, you know, beautiful women on a train or whatever, we see these things on YouTube or whatnot, it's often the white, blue eyes, blonde hair sort of approach, and that's a reflection actually of what people were wanting. And so we're seeing some of these uncomfortable biases. You've mentioned as well practical terms, in terms of applying for credit, there can be biases there. So Regina's question, which is about EDI. If we're viewing equality, wanting to take this seriously, wanting, whether it be recruitment, whether it be in banking, whatever area it is, how do we make sure that this is done equitably, equally, and at the same time trustless, as the current term is? Maybe I can direct that question to Donald, if you're comfortable with such a large question.
Hi, yeah, I had spotted Regina's question, and I'm really kind of interested. I did a wee bit of teaching on this topic. Where is it? Let me find it. So Regina says, I went to a presentation this morning. Graduate recruiters were talking about how not to lose candidates from the process, how to make things more personal, and how to make sure they take EDI into account. So there's been some research on candidate attitudes towards the use of AI for recruitment and selection, and it's interesting and contradictory, because the research suggests that AI is less biased than humans when it comes to selection decisions, because human beings are biased. You know, there's a lot of research which shows, in terms of recruitment and selections, there's a lot of human bias happens. In terms of like science and technology jobs, just to give a random example, there's a male selection bias for science and technology jobs. And there's been research which has shown that if you submit the same CV for science jobs, but you change the name, you maybe have one CV with Rachel and one CV with Robert, the CV with the name Robert gets shortlisted much more than the CV with Rachel. So human bias is a real issue, and AI is less biased. But the interesting thing, humans don't trust the AI so much. The people who got the candidates who were recruited via AI didn't like the technology. They thought it was impersonal. So even though the technology is less biased, people don't trust it yet. They're worried about a robot making a decision to reject them, etc. One of the questions in the chat is, can we trust data generated by AI? So there is an issue about trust. Do we trust these things? But it's ironic that they may be making less biased decisions than humans, but we still don't trust them.
So I'm actually going to connect that point with Lynn's question. Lynn has mentioned that we're in danger of recreating the colonialization of knowledge. Now, the reason why I'm going to link that together is because a lot of the current AI models that we've got are using essentially open source information, which is overwhelmingly within the English language. So it creates a distinct bias, not only in terms of language, but therefore also from cultural backdrop, where certain practicals and certain principles might be applied differently in different countries. So how is there a way of avoiding this potential byproduct of colonialization? Maybe Jag, your thoughts on this one?
Again, it's a very tough question. To look at this. The initial research and development in this area and the internet itself, you go back even before AI to the internet, it was developed using English as the basic language for interoperability. Over time, as the world's accepted the internet, we've had to localize other languages, Chinese, for example, and others as well. At the moment, a lot of the research and the development for startups in this space are primarily from the Western countries. Now, I say that with some caveat. Yes, there's a lot of research going on in China as well, but this is specific for the China market. It's not out particularly for the global market per se. Okay, so there's definitely going to be a need for having some form of, let's say, interoperability between different versions of AI. There is a move towards creating some ratings, rankings, verifiability of the data and authenticity of where the data came from in order to generate the outcome. And these are still work in progress at the moment, to be fair. There's nothing hard and fast. The reason I think governments are probably a little reluctant and slow to open this space up is obviously because if you come down now with regulations, then you may stifle the innovation that's taking place in this space. If you have too much regulation, then suddenly people say, well, it's too difficult to develop now, it's too expensive to develop, and they'll move away. I think usually in any new technology, what happens is you have a massive amount of investment come in, a massive amount of innovation takes place. And when the sun goes down, there'll probably be many, many companies, but only a few will survive. And I think at this stage, a lot is being developed in this space. There's lots of questions. There's the ethics, there's the morals, all of these questions, which the panel is raising as well. But nothing's been done about that, to be fair. Because it's simply the innovation and the technology itself. It's so cool, it's so good, we can do this, we can do that. But do we need to do this? Do we need to do that? That's not being addressed at this stage. Okay. And we do have the risk of Western, let's say Western countries driving the technology simply because funding is primarily the purpose of helping the startups drive this technology. So if we can kind of spread the opportunity a little bit more across the globe, then I think that will kind of level the playing field to some extent. But you can't have this technology just in a few hands. It's too powerful. It's be very unwise. It's got to be shared. It's got to be a mutual consensus in developing, the rules for managing this as well. But this is going to take time. To be fair, it's not something going to be quick or fast, I don't believe. But it's something we need to be thinking about. We need to be having these conversations about it now. Otherwise, you have that real risk of domination by a few countries, perhaps, simply because of their size and the investment.
And one of the things which, Gabrielle was unfortunately not able to join us today, but she was commenting in a previous conversation, was that we might see maybe particular companies dominating in sort of general AI, but once we start focusing on niche areas, that's where we start having more specialisms and different companies come up, much in the same way as we do see within the regular corporate world. And part of that is, for example, if we look at case law, there will be countries like the UK or America where if there's been legal proceedings, those legal proceedings are often almost open book afterwards, whereas somewhere like China is much more opaque and doesn't have access. So AI cannot learn how to interpret law in these situations if there's not that kind of raw material to learn from. So I want to maybe just two quick questions, because I recognize we are already moving towards the close of today. Kyo has kind of stated AI will not necessarily take your job, but those who use AI. Jack hinted at something similar, survival of the fittest from the corporate world. But Olive, HR director, sounds very much HR-y. What's your thoughts on Kyo's comment there?
That all depends. That really all depends. I don't know what kind of AI that you are using or who is using that. So it's hard to comment from my view. Because honestly speaking, in my reality, that we are using AI to generate or to visualize our concept. Previously, we have to have a designer, a planner to work on this. Right now, the planner maybe can work on this directly without a designer. So who gonna lose the job, lose the position in that situation? But sometimes, okay, if the designer also want to think or to also want to visualize his or her concept by using AI quickly and can mock up by her or his own skill, might be even better than a planner. So that really depends on how you leverage it. And you also your willingness and your capability to learn how to master it.
Thank you, Olive. So acknowledging the time of today, maybe rapid fire closing remarks from each of our panelists. So returning to the overall theme, I mean, we've expanded across different areas, but our theme today, AI and the future of work. So any last minute tips or advice for people on our call? Maybe Jack, your microphone's on, so I'll come to you first.
I'll switch it off next time. Okay, so no, I think in conclusion, you know, the argument or the discussion around AI and humans, it shouldn't be framed on the basis of humans versus AI. Okay, it's one or the other. It's a binary kind of question. It's either them or us. I think it's a case of AI and humans together. There is this collaborative model that David had alluded to in the beginning as well. There is a model here where this technology is made by us to make life easier for us, to provide a better living experience for the humans and for humanity in the future. Okay, it's just that it raises big issues of how we function as a society, how we function for the last 3,000-4,000 years, and how we function for the next 3,000-4,000 years. Because many of the mundane tasks, routine tasks, work, as we define work, we don't necessarily need to do ourselves. I think the technology can take or replace this element. That would be a good thing in my view, if we can supplant this with not necessarily more pleasurable work, but doing things that are meaningful, that have a purpose in life. Now, again, these are big questions. Government needs to look at this. Universal basic income may need to come in, because how do people survive in society? I think there's a good spin-offs from this, but I don't think it's going to be a case where it's simply, AI against us. It's a good or bad equation. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think it's a case of mutual, cooperation and collaboration here. All I would say to everybody as last parting words is, please, if you're not familiar with these technologies, start familiarizing yourselves. The only person who can help you is you. So get going, and start adding some of these skill sets to your knowledge, to your understanding. So you're aware. With awareness comes learning. With learning becomes knowledge. And then you're in a better position. But it's not something to fear. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jack. And IBM, as you mentioned before. Donald, 10, 20 seconds.
Just reinforcing what Jag said, I mean, my primary interest is in workers. How are the jobs of workers affected? And Olive has also said the same. People need to engage with these technologies. There's no future to some extent without AI, so people will have to embrace these technologies and use them. The question that said about AI won't replace people; it's people with AI skills. That is, if we're in the job market, we need to have some AI skills. So everyone needs to upskill to some extent.
Yeah, thank you, Donald. Similarly, Olive, any closing remark?
Yes. As a human being, let's dance with the AI. Dance with AI. AI is a dancing partner with us. Yes. I always have some craziness in my mind. I will think that maybe this is a chance for human being to create a new world, maybe a silicon world. However, AI still a something. I cannot say it's a human being or not, or a machine. AI is something created by humans. So our spirits are inside. So they are not our enemies. They are just a baby, a newborn baby. We don't know how it will be developed. However, we are the tutor, we are the teacher.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah.
It's profound. Thank you, Olive. So acknowledging a few people maybe need to head on to their next meetings, I'll wrap up today's event. And as I do that, I want to, of course, thank everyone who has joined. And I hope that this has been as insightful for you as it has been for me. I also want to reiterate my special thanks to each of our guest speakers who've joined today, who've contributed their valuable time to share knowledge and experiences with us. And this event really has been it's only been able to happen because of a committed team within the University of Aberdeen who have helped make this happen. Okay, so to learn more about future events like these or suggest topics that you'd like to learn more about, please engage with the University of Aberdeen Business School on LinkedIn or Twitter. Of course, my name's John Storm. Feel free to add me, and if you want to follow up, I'm happy to have conversations separately. I look forward to seeing you all again at a future event. Otherwise, good afternoon and good evening to all. Cheerio.
Thanks very much, John. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, John. Bye.